Ariana ran, her breath hitching in her chest as she pushed herself deeper into the forest. She didn't know what was chasing her, but the primal fear coursing through her veins told her to keep going. Her bare feet scraped against the rough terrain, her tattered dress clinging to her like a second skin. "Stop running!" a low, commanding voice called out, freezing her mid-step. It was deep and rough, like gravel, with an unmistakable edge of authority. She turned her head slightly, her wide green eyes scanning the darkness. Her heart pounded, but she couldn't see him. Whoever or whatever he was still hidden in the shadows. "I won't hurt you," the voice continued, but Ariana didn't believe it. Nothing good came from a voice that smooth, that powerful. "You don't sound very convincing," she shouted back, her voice trembling despite her attempt at bravery. A low chuckle reverberated through the air, sending shivers down her spine. Before she could take another step, he appeared. He stepped into the moonlight, tall and broad, his dark hair ruffled by the night breeze. His piercing golden eyes locked onto hers, holding her captive with just a look. Ariana stumbled back. You're not human," she whispered. He smirked, his sharp canines catching the light. "And neither are you, little one." Ariana's mind raced as she stared at the man, or rather, the creature standing before her. His golden eyes glowed unnaturally in the moonlight, and the air around him seemed charged, like the calm before a storm. His presence was magnetic, pulling her in even as every instinct screamed at her to run. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice cracking. She took a cautious step back, her foot crunching on a dry twig. The man tilted his head, studying her like a predator sizing up its prey. "Don't play coy. I've been tracking you for weeks. You felt it, haven't you? The pull. The power awakening inside you." Ariana's chest tightened. She had felt it. Strange sensations she couldn't explain. Her senses sharpening, her emotions becoming volatile, dreams of running wild under the moonlight. But she'd chalked it up to stress or exhaustion. "You've got the wrong person," she said, shaking her head. "I'm just ordinary." He stepped closer, his movements fluid and deliberate, like a wolf stalking its quarry. "Ordinary? Is that what you think? Then why are you running, little one?" Her back hit a tree, and she cursed inwardly. Cornered. She clenched her fists, trying to summon some courage. "Because you're creepy and chasing me through the woods." That earned another chuckle, deep and rich. "Fair enough," he admitted. "But running won't save you. The mark is already there." "What mark?" she snapped, frustration and fear warring within her. Instead of answering, he reached out, his hand brushing the side of her neck. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through her body. She flinched, but his grip was firm, tilting her head to the side. "There," he murmured, his gaze fixed on a faint symbol etched into her skin just below her ear. Ariana shoved him away, her heart pounding. "What is that? What did you do to me?" "It's not what I did," he said, his tone softening slightly. "It's what you are. The mark means you belong to me now, to my pack." She stared at him, her breath catching. "Belong to you? What the hell does that mean? I don't even know you." The man straightened, his eyes darkening. "You will. My name is Lucian Blackthorn, Alpha of the Blood Moon Pack. And you, Ariana, are my mate." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ariana shook her head furiously. No way, this is insane." Lucian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "You can deny it all you want, but the mark doesn't lie. You've felt the changes, haven't you? The heightened senses, the dreams." She opened her mouth to argue but stopped. He was right, and that scared her even more. "You have a choice," Lucian continued, his voice steady. "Come with me willingly and I'll protect you, or stay here alone and risk the hunters finding you first." "Hunters?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's jaw tightened. "Humans who kill our kind. They've already caught your scent. They'll come for you, and they won't show mercy." Ariana's knees felt weak. She wanted to call him a liar, to believe that this was all some elaborate nightmare. But deep down, she knew he wasn't lying. I need time to think," she said, her voice trembling. Lucian's gaze softened, but there was an unyielding edge to it. "Time is something you don't have. But I'll give you one night. Meet me at the edge of the forest by dawn, if you're not there." He didn't finish the sentence, but the warning was clear. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Ariana alone with her racing thoughts and the faint echo of his voice in her ears. Ariana stumbled back to her small apartment on the edge of town, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She locked the door behind her, as if it could keep out the impossible reality she'd just encountered. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Midnight. The rest of the world was asleep, blissfully unaware of the supernatural chaos invading her life. Collapsing onto the worn couch, she pressed her fingers to the mark on her neck. It was faint, almost invisible, but now that she knew it was there, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Her mind raced with questions. Who was Lucian Blackthorn? Why her? What did it mean to be his mate? As the hours ticked by, exhaustion began to overtake her, and she drifted into a restless sleep. In her dreams, she was running through the forest, her bare feet gliding over the soft earth. The moonlight bathed her in its glow, and she felt powerful, free. She could hear the whispers of the trees, the rustle of leaves, the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. Then she felt him. Lucian. His presence was like a shadow at her back, watching, waiting. She turned, and there he was, his golden eyes blazing. "Run, Ariana," he murmured. And she did. A sudden noise jolted her awake. She sat up, her heart hammering in her chest. Someone was outside. Slowly, she crept to the window and peeked through the curtain. Her blood turned to ice. A figure stood in the shadows, watching her. It wasn't Lucian. This man was different, leaner, with sharp features and cold eyes. Hunters. Before she could react, the window shattered and everything descended into chaos. Ariana screamed as the window shattered, glass scattering like shards of ice across her apartment floor. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of danger. A man stepped through the broken frame, his movements eerily calm. He was lean, with calculating eyes and a faint scar running from his temple to his jawline. "Miss Harlow," he said, his voice deceptively polite. "You've been quite hard to find." Ariana backed away, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "Who the hell are you?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who's here to help you, believe it or not. You're in over your head, little wolf." "Wolf?" Her voice trembled as the word fell from her lips. The man tilted his head, his smile widening. "Oh, don't play dumb. We've been tracking you since your first shift. You've caused quite a stir, you know. An unclaimed wolf with no pack? It's a death sentence." Ariana felt her stomach drop. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. The man's expression darkened. "You can lie to yourself, but not to me. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice." Before she could respond, another figure appeared in the shattered window, larger, more imposing. The dim light caught his golden eyes, and Ariana's heart leapt. Lucian. He moved so fast it was almost a blur. One moment the hunter was reaching for Ariana, and the next, he was slammed against the wall, Lucian's hand gripping his throat. "I warned you," Lucian growled, his voice low and menacing. "She's under my protection." The hunter gasped, his hands clawing at Lucian's unyielding grip. "The council won't let you. Keep her," he choked out. Lucian's eyes flashed with anger, and he tightened his grip. "The council doesn't scare me." "Lucian, stop!" Ariana's voice cut through the tension. Lucian glanced at her, his expression softening just slightly. He released the hunter, who crumpled to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. The hunter looked up, his face pale but defiant. "This isn't over," he spat, before retreating through the broken window and disappearing into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Ariana stood frozen, her eyes locked on Lucian. "You're bleeding," he said softly, his gaze dropping to her arm. She looked down and realized she'd cut herself on the glass. A shallow gash ran along her forearm, blood trickling down to her wrist. Lucian stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate. "May I?" She nodded, too stunned to argue. He took her arm gently, his touch surprisingly tender for someone so fierce. "You need to leave this place," he said as he examined the wound. "It's not safe anymore." Ariana pulled her arm back, her fear giving way to frustration. "And what?" Go with you? You're just as dangerous as they are. Lucian frowned, his golden eyes narrowing. The difference is, I'll protect you. They won't. She crossed her arms over her chest, her resolve hardening. I don't even know you, and I don't trust you. His expression softened, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his face. You may not trust me now, but you will. The bond between us, it's stronger than you realize. Ariana's heart raced at his words. The bond. She'd heard of it in stories. An unbreakable connection between mates, forged by fate. But she'd never imagined it would happen to her. I didn't ask for any of this, she said quietly. Lucian's gaze softened further. Neither did I, but here we are. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent a jolt through her, a mix of fear and something she couldn't quite name. Pack your things, he said. We leave tonight. Ariana hesitated, torn between staying in the only home she'd ever known and stepping into a world she didn't understand. Why should I trust you? She asked. Lucian's jaw tightened. Because whether you like it or not, you're mine. And I protect what's mine. The night was still and heavy as Ariana followed Lucian into the forest. She'd barely had time to grab her essentials, a backpack with a few clothes, her phone, and a worn photo of her late parents. Lucian led the way, his strides confident and purposeful. He didn't look back to check if she was following, as if he already knew she would. Where are we going? She asked, her voice breaking the oppressive silence. To my pack's territory, he replied without turning around. It's the safest place for you. Ariana frowned. And what if I don't want to stay there? Lucian stopped abruptly, turning to face her. Then you're welcome to leave, but don't expect me to come running if the hunters find you again. The bluntness of his words stung, but she couldn't deny the truth in them. She was in over her head, and as much as she hated to admit it, Lucian was her best chance at survival. They continued in silence until they reached a clearing. The moonlight bathed the area in a soft glow, illuminating a group of figures standing in the shadows. Lucian raised a hand and the figures stepped forward. Ariana, he said, his voice steady. Meet my pack. Ariana's steps faltered as the figures emerged from the shadows, their piercing eyes gleaming in the moonlight. There were 6 of them, each exuding an aura of raw power and danger. Unlike Lucian, whose presence felt controlled and commanding, these wolves radiated something wilder, less restrained. This is the girl, a tall woman with raven-black hair asked, her tone sharp. Her gaze swept over Ariana, lingering on her neck where the faint mark rested. She doesn't look like much. Careful, Sienna, Lucian warned, his voice calm but carrying a note of authority that silenced her immediately. The others exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. One of them, a young man with sandy hair and a mischievous grin, stepped forward. She smells like trouble, he said, sniffing the air dramatically. And blood. Did you get into a fight already? She was attacked by hunters, Lucian said, his tone dark. We need to get her to safety. The sandy-haired man whistled. Hunters? This one's already making enemies. Impressive. I didn't make enemies, Ariana snapped, her fear giving way to frustration. They came after me. The man raised his eyebrows, clearly amused. Feisty. I like. That's enough, Ethan, Lucian said, stepping between Ariana and the pack. His presence was a shield, both reassuring and intimidating. She's under my protection. That makes her one of us. Does it? Sienna asked, crossing her arms. She hasn't shifted, hasn't proven herself. For all we know, she could be a liability. She's my mate, Lucian growled, his golden eyes flashing. Ariana's breath caught. Hearing the word out loud, mate, made everything feel even more surreal. The tension in the clearing was palpable. Sienna's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more, stepping back into the circle of wolves. Lucian turned to Ariana, his expression softening slightly. Come on, we'll talk inside. The pack's den was nothing like Ariana had imagined. Hidden deep within the forest, it was a sprawling network of cabins and underground tunnels, blending seamlessly into the landscape. The main cabin, where Lucian led her, was warm and inviting, with a roaring fireplace and wooden beams that gave it a rustic charm. "This is where the alpha stays," Lucian explained as he opened the door. Ariana hesitated before stepping inside. The room was cozy yet imposing, much like Lucian himself. A large table dominated the center, its surface covered with maps and documents. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, artifacts, and weapons. Lucian gestured for her to sit by the fire. She sank into the plush armchair, the heat soothing her chilled skin. "You have questions," he said, taking the seat opposite her. "It's not," he said firmly. "You were born with dormant blood, part human, part wolf. Something triggered your transformation. The mark on your neck is proof that your wolf has awakened." She instinctively touched the mark, her stomach churning. "And what does it mean? That I'm yours?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "It means we're bonded. Fate chose us as mates. It's not something I control, and it's not something you can change." Ariana's mind reeled. Bonded? Mates? It all sounded like something out of a fantasy novel. "So, what happens now?" "You stay here," Lucian said. "I'll train you, teach you how to control your wolf. The pack will protect you until you're strong enough to protect yourself. And if I don't want to be part of your pack?" Lucian's eyes darkened. "Then you'll be on your own. But the hunters won't stop until they find you. And when they do." He let the sentence hang in the air, the unspoken threat chilling her to the bone. Ariana looked away, her hands trembling. She didn't want this life. She hadn't asked for it. But as much as she wanted to walk away, she knew he was right. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll stay. For now." Lucian nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good, get some rest. Tomorrow, we start training." The next morning, Ariana woke to the sound of voices outside. She pulled on the clothes someone had left for her, a simple pair of jeans and a loose sweater, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The pack was gathered in the clearing, their attention focused on Lucian. He stood in the center, his presence commanding as he addressed them. "We have a new member," he announced, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "She's untrained, but she's one of us. I expect you to treat her as such." Sienna scoffed loudly. "One of us? She hasn't earned it." Lucian's eyes flicked to her, his expression cold. "Would you like to challenge my decision, Sienna?" The air grew tense, the pack holding their breath as Sienna hesitated. Finally, she shook her head, though her glare remained fixed on Ariana. Lucian turned to Ariana, his gaze softening. "Come here." Her heart pounded as she stepped forward, every pair of eyes in the clearing fixed on her. "This is Ariana," Lucian said. "She's my mate, she bears my mark, and she is under my protection." Ethan stepped forward, his grin mischievous. "If she's one of us, let her prove it. A run through the forest, maybe? See if she can keep up." Ariana froze. "What?" Lucian's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not yet," he said. "First we train. Then we run." The pack murmured in approval, though Sienna's discontent was clear. Lucian turned to Ariana, his eyes locking onto hers. "This is your chance to show them who you are," he said quietly. "Are you ready?" Her stomach twisted, but she nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The clearing fell silent as Lucian led Ariana to the center, his presence commanding the attention of the pack. His voice, steady and firm, cut through the tension. "Training isn't just about strength," he said, his golden eyes scanning the group. "It's about control. Ariana is new to our world, but she'll learn. Just as all of you did." The pack members exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement while others, like Sienna, remained skeptical. Lucian turned to Ariana, his expression softening slightly. "We'll start with the basics." Ariana's heart raced. She didn't know what to expect, but she was determined not to look weak in front of them. "Ethan," Lucian called, gesturing to the sandy-haired wolf, "pair up with her." Ethan grinned and stepped forward, rolling his shoulders. "Don't worry, I'll go easy on you." Ariana crossed her arms, narrowing her eyes at him. "I don't need your pity." The pack chuckled, and Ethan raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fair enough." Lucian guided them to a smaller, enclosed space on the edge of the clearing. The ground was packed dirt, worn smooth by years of use. "Shift control is the foundation of your training," Lucian explained. "Your wolf is a part of you, but it's also wild. If you can't control the shift, You'll put yourself and everyone around you at risk." Ariana frowned. "Shift, you mean? Turn into a wolf?" "Yes," Lucian said simply. Ariana stared at him, her stomach twisting. She'd felt the pull of something primal inside her, but the idea of physically transforming was terrifying. "I've never done it before," she admitted. "That's why we're starting here," Lucian said. "Ethan will push you, but you have to stay in control." Ethan cracked his knuckles, his grin widening. "This'll be fun." "Don't hurt her," Lucian warned, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Ethan's grin faltered slightly. "Of course not, Alpha." Lucian stepped back, his golden eyes fixed on Ariana. "Ready?" She swallowed hard and nodded. Ethan moved first, lunging at her with a speed that took her breath away. Ariana barely had time to react, dodging to the side as he swung at her. "Faster than I expected," Ethan said, circling her like a predator. Ariana's heart pounded as she tried to focus. Her senses felt sharper, every sound and movement amplified. She could hear the rustle of leaves, the distant chirp of birds, even the steady rhythm of Ethan's breathing. He came at her again, feinting left before darting right. This time, she managed to sidestep and shove him away, surprising herself with her strength. Ethan stumbled back, laughing. Not bad. But as the fight continued, Ariana felt a strange heat building inside her. Her vision blurred, her muscles tensing as an unfamiliar energy surged through her veins. "Breathe, Ariana," Lucian called, his voice cutting through the haze. "Stay in control." Ariana clenched her fists, struggling to ground herself. But the heat intensified, and a sharp pain shot through her body. She gasped, falling to her knees. "Shift's starting," Ethan said, backing away. The pack gathered at the edge of the enclosure, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. Lucian moved closer, his voice calm but firm. "Focus on me, Ariana. Don't fight it, guide it." Ariana looked up at him, her vision swimming. She felt her nails lengthen, her teeth aching as they sharpened. Panic clawed at her, but Lucian's gaze held her steady. "You're stronger than the wolf," he said. "You control it. It doesn't control you." His words anchored her, and she forced herself to breathe. Slowly, the pain ebbed, and the heat subsided. Her nails retracted, her teeth returning to normal. The pack watched in stunned silence as Ariana pushed herself to her feet, her body trembling but whole. "She stopped the shift," Sienna said, her tone laced with disbelief. Ethan let out a low whistle. "That's rare for a first-timer." Lucian approached Ariana, his expression unreadable. "You did well," he said quietly. She looked at him, her chest heaving. That was terrifying. "It gets easier," he said, "but it takes time." Over the next few days, Ariana threw herself into training. Lucian worked with her every morning, teaching her to channel her wolf's instincts without losing control. The pack's initial skepticism began to fade as they saw her determination. Even Sienna, though still aloof, seemed to begrudgingly respect Ariana's progress. But the bond between Ariana and Lucian was what truly began to shift. He was patient and encouraging, pushing her to her limits, but never letting her feel alone. She found herself looking forward to their sessions, not just for the training but for the moments of connection they shared. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ariana sat by the fire in Lucian's cabin. He was reviewing a map, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you ever stop working?" she asked, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Lucian looked up, surprised by her tone. "An alpha's work is never done." She rolled her eyes. "You should try relaxing once in a while. Maybe even smile." To her surprise, he chuckled, a deep, rich sound that made her chest tighten. "I smile plenty." "Could have fooled me," she muttered, earning another laugh. For a moment, the weight of their situation lifted, and they were just two people sharing a quiet moment. But the unspoken tension between them lingered, a pull that neither of them could deny. The peace didn't last. One night, the pack's alarm howled through the forest, a deep, resonant sound that sent chills down Ariana's spine. Lucian burst into her cabin, his eyes blazing. "The hunters found us." Ariana's blood ran cold. "What do we do?" "We fight," Lucian said. He grabbed her arm, his grip firm but reassuring. "Stay close to me, no matter what happens. As they ran into the clearing, the pack was already assembled, their forms shifting as they prepared for battle. The air was thick with tension, the ground trembling beneath the weight of their steps. Ariana felt the heat rise within her again, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was resolve. For the first time, she wasn't running. She was ready to fight. The hunters emerged from the shadows of the forest, their presence menacing and calculated. They moved in tight formation, each armed with weapons designed to maim or kill wolves like Lucian's pack. Ariana stood at Lucian's side, her heart pounding like a drum. The pack surrounded them, growls rumbling low in their throats as the hunters approached. Lucian's voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. "You shouldn't have come here." The lead hunter, a man with cold, steel-gray eyes, smirked. "We're not leaving without her." His gaze landed on Ariana, and she shivered under the weight of it. "She's mine," Lucian growled, his golden eyes glowing fiercely. "You'll have to go through me." The hunter's smirk widened. "Gladly." The forest erupted into chaos. The pack sprang into action, their bodies shifting mid-leap as they charged at the hunters. Snarls and shouts filled the air, the clash of teeth against steel echoing through the clearing. Lucian shoved Ariana behind him, his wolf already rippling beneath his skin. "Stay close to me," he ordered, his voice rough. A hunter lunged at them, his silver blade gleaming in the moonlight. Lucian moved with lightning speed, deflecting the attack and throwing the man to the ground. Ariana's instinct screamed at her to run, but she couldn't leave him. She grabbed a fallen branch, gripping it tightly as another hunter approached. The man sneered, clearly amused by her makeshift weapon. "Think you can take me, little wolf?" he taunted. Her grip tightened. "I can try." Before he could strike, Lucian was there, his claws slashing through the air. The hunter fell with a cry, and Lucian turned to Ariana, his face fierce. "You're brave," he said, his voice low, but reckless. "I'm not going to stand here and do nothing," she shot back. His lips twitched, almost like he wanted to smile, but another hunter interrupted, forcing him back into the fray. As the fight raged on, Ariana felt a surge of energy building inside her, a raw, untamed power that begged to be unleashed. Her vision sharpened, her senses heightened. She could feel her wolf stirring, pushing against the barriers she'd worked so hard to control. Lucian noticed immediately. "Ariana!" he called, his voice cutting through the chaos. She turned to him, her breath coming in short gasps. "It's happening again," she said, panic creeping into her voice. He was at her side in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Breathe," he said, his tone firm but reassuring. "Focus on me." Her eyes locked onto his, and the world around them seemed to fade. His touch was grounding, his presence a lifeline in the storm of her emotions. "You're stronger than this," he said, his voice softening. "You've already proven that. Trust yourself." She nodded, swallowing hard. The energy inside her shifted, no longer wild and chaotic, but something she could harness. She felt her wolf retreat, her body calming under Lucian's steady gaze. "You're incredible," he murmured, almost to himself. Ariana's cheeks flushed, but before she could respond, another hunter attacked. The hunters were relentless, their numbers seeming endless. Lucian fought with a ferocity that left Ariana breathless. His movements were precise and brutal, every strike protecting his pack and her. But the pack wasn't without losses. Ethan was injured, a deep gash across his chest, and several others had shifted back, their human forms battered and bruised. Lucian growled low in his throat, his frustration clear. "We need to end this." The lead hunter stepped forward, his steel-gray eyes locking onto Lucian. "You can't protect her forever," he said, his tone mocking. "She doesn't belong in your world." "She belongs with me," Lucian snapped, his voice echoing through the clearing. Ariana's breath caught at the conviction in his words. The hunter smirked. "Then let's see if you can keep her." He lunged at Lucian, his blade aimed straight for his heart. Ariana acted without thinking. She threw herself between them, the blade slicing into her side instead. Pain exploded through her body, but she didn't cry out. Lucian caught her as she fell, his eyes wide with shock and fury. "Ariana!" he shouted, his voice breaking. The hunter hesitated, clearly surprised by her sacrifice. It was all Lucian needed. With a roar, he shifted fully, his massive wolf form tearing through the man in a blur of teeth and claws. The remaining hunters fled, their leader's fall breaking their resolve. The clearing was quiet now, the air heavy with the scent of blood and sweat. Lucian shifted back, his human form kneeling beside Ariana. His hands were gentle but frantic as he pressed them against her wound, trying to stem the bleeding. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice shaking. "I couldn't let him hurt you," she whispered, her voice weak. His eyes met hers, filled with a mix of anger and something deeper, something that made her heart ache. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met," he said, his tone softening. A faint smile tugged at her lips. "Takes one to know one." Lucian let out a shaky laugh, his forehead resting against hers for a brief moment. "Don't scare me like that again," he murmured. "I'll try," she said, her eyes fluttering closed. "No," he said firmly, his voice laced with desperation. "Stay with me, Ariana. Don't you dare give up." The pack surrounded them, their faces filled with concern. Sienna knelt beside Lucian, her usual sharpness replaced by genuine worry. "She's strong," Sienna said quietly. "She'll pull through." Lucian didn't look up, his focus entirely on Ariana. She has to. The night ended with the pack carrying Ariana back to the den, their unity stronger than ever. For Lucian, the battle had been a wake-up call, a reminder of how deeply he cared for her. As she lay resting in his cabin, her wound carefully tended, Lucian sat by her side, his hand holding hers. "You're mine," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "And I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Ariana's eyes fluttered open, her gaze meeting his. Despite the pain, she managed a small smile. "Guess you're stuck with me then?" Lucian chuckled, leaning down to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Ariana woke to the warmth of a fire crackling nearby. The scent of pine and earth filled her senses, mingling with something distinct, Lucian's scent. She stirred slightly, wincing as pain lanced through her side. "Don't move too much," a deep voice murmured. Her eyes fluttered open, and she found Lucian sitting beside her, his golden eyes soft with concern. He was shirtless, his broad shoulders catching the firelight, the muscles tense with worry. "Lucian," she said, her voice hoarse. He leaned closer, his hand brushing her hair back from her face. The touch was so tender it made her heart ache. "You're safe," he said, his voice low and soothing. "The wound's healing, but you need to rest." Ariana blinked up at him, the memories of the fight rushing back. You saved me." "You saved me first," he countered, his jaw tightening. "Don't do that again." Her lips twitched into a faint smile. "You're not the boss of me." Lucian sighed, but there was a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Stubborn as ever." The cabin was quiet, the only sounds the crackling fire and the distant howl of wolves. Ariana felt a strange intimacy in the moment, as though the outside world had faded away, leaving just the two of them. "Why did you do it?" Lucian asked suddenly, his gaze piercing. She hesitated, unsure how to put her feelings into words. "I couldn't stand the thought of you getting hurt. You've done so much for me, and I care about you." Her cheeks flushed as the words left her lips, but she didn't look away. Lucian's eyes softened, the hard edges of his expression melting into something more vulnerable. "Ariana." He reached out, his hand covering hers. His touch was warm, grounding her in a way nothing else could. "I've been fighting this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "This connection between us. It's dangerous for both of us, but when I thought I might lose you..." He trailed off, his throat working as he swallowed hard. "You felt it too," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her chest. He nodded, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "It's more than a bond, it's something I can't ignore anymore." The firelight cast a golden glow across Lucian's face, highlighting the vulnerability in his expression. Ariana's heart ached for him, for the weight he carried as alpha, for the walls he'd built around himself. "You don't have to fight it," she said softly. Lucian's gaze locked onto hers, the intensity of it stealing her breath. "You don't know what you're asking for," he said, his voice rough. Being with me means danger. It means sacrifice. Ariana's lips curved into a faint smile. Sounds like my life already. He let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. You're impossible. And you're infuriating, she shot back, her tone teasing. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Lucian leaned closer. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his voice a low growl. She didn't. His lips brushed against hers, tentative at first, as though he was giving her a chance to pull away. When she didn't, he deepened the kiss, his hand moving to cup her cheek. Ariana's fingers curled into his hair, pulling him closer. The world around them melted away, leaving only the heat of his touch and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against hers. Ariana woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin window. She stretched, wincing slightly as her side protested. The events of the previous night came rushing back, and her cheeks flushed. Lucian was sitting by the fire, a fresh shirt draped over his broad shoulders. He turned when he heard her stir, a small smile softening his features. Good morning, he said, his voice warm. Morning, she replied, her cheeks still pink. He stood and walked over to her, sitting on the edge of the bed. His hand found hers, his touch as steadying as it had been the night before. How are you feeling? He asked, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Sore, she admitted, but happy. His smile widened, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something lighter in his eyes, hope, perhaps. Over the next few days, their relationship shifted. The pack noticed the change, their gazes lingering on the two of them with a mix of curiosity and approval. Even Sienna, though still guarded, seemed to accept Ariana's growing role in Lucian's life. Lucian was more protective than ever, his watchful presence a constant reassurance. But he also allowed Ariana to push herself in training, trusting her to find her own strength. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Lucian reached for her hand. I don't know what the future holds, he said, his voice low, but I know I want you in it. Ariana's heart swelled at his words. I want the same. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Then we'll face whatever comes together. But the peace between them was short-lived. One night, a messenger arrived at the pack's border, bearing news that sent a chill through Lucian's veins. The hunters aren't done, the messenger said, his voice grim. They've regrouped, and they're coming for her. Lucian's jaw tightened, his hand instinctively seeking Ariana's. We'll be ready, he said, his voice steady. But in his heart, he knew the battle ahead would test not only their strength, but the bond they'd just begun to build. The news of the hunter's return sent ripples of unease through the pack. Lucian called an emergency meeting that night in the clearing behind his cabin. The pack gathered in tense silence, their faces grim under the pale light of the moon. Ariana stood beside Lucian, her hand brushing against his. It was a subtle touch, but it grounded her. Despite her lingering pain, she refused to stay hidden in the cabin while the others planned for a fight that was just as much hers as theirs. Lucian's voice cut through the heavy air, strong and commanding. The hunters are regrouping. They'll strike soon, and this time they'll come with more firepower, more numbers. They won't stop until they get what they want. His gaze swept over the pack, golden eyes burning with determination. But we won't let them take it. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the wolves. Sienna stepped forward, her sharp gaze landing on Ariana. She's their target, she said bluntly. What's the plan for her? Ariana bristled. I'm standing right here, you know, and I'm not running away, if that's what you're suggesting. Sienna's lips quirked into a smirk. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. Lucian raised a hand, silencing the exchange. Ariana stays with me, he said firmly. We'll keep her safe, but she's part of this pack now. That means she fights with us. Ariana's heart swelled at his words, even as the weight of the situation settled more heavily on her shoulders. The days that followed were grueling. Lucian led the pack in intense training sessions, pushing them to their limits. He was a force to be reckoned with, his strength and strategy inspiring even the youngest wolves to fight harder. Ariana trained alongside them, determined to prove her worth. Lucian stayed close, his presence both a comfort and a challenge. He pushed her harder than the others. but not out of cruelty. It was clear he believed in her potential. "You're faster than you think," he told her one evening as they sparred. His movements were fluid and controlled, but his strikes carried enough force to test her reflexes. Ariana ducked under his swing, her breath coming in sharp bursts. "And you're holding back." His lips curved into a teasing smile. "Maybe, but I can't risk you getting hurt." She lunged at him, catching him off guard. He stumbled back slightly, laughing as he caught her wrist. "There's that fire I love." Ariana froze at his words, her cheeks flushing. Lucian seemed to realize what he'd said, but instead of taking it back, he held her gaze. "You're incredible," he said softly. For a moment, the rest of the world faded away, and it was just the two of them. But the sound of Sienna clearing her throat broke the spell. "If you two are done flirting, we have a war to prepare for," she said, her tone dry but not unkind. Ariana pulled back, her cheeks burning, but Lucian just chuckled. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Lucian and Ariana deepened. They spent their evenings together, often talking late into the night about their pasts, their fears, and their hopes for the future. One night, as they sat by the fire, Lucian opened up about his family. "My father was a great alpha," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "But he was strict. He believed in strength above all else. I spent my whole life trying to live up to his expectations." Ariana reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "You're a great alpha too," she said softly. "Your pack would follow you anywhere. That's because of who you are, not who your father was." Lucian's gaze softened. "And what about you? What would make you stay?" The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ariana hesitated, her heart pounding. "You," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian leaned closer, his hand brushing against her cheek. "You're mine, Ariana," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "and I'll protect you with everything I have." The night before the hunters were expected to arrive, the pack gathered for a final meeting. The plan was simple but risky. They would lure the hunters into the forest, where their knowledge of the terrain would give them an advantage. Lucian stood at the center of the group, his presence commanding. "This is our home," he said, his voice steady. "We fight not just for Ariana, but for all of us. We won't let them take what's ours." The pack responded with a unified howl, their loyalty to their alpha unwavering. Later that night, as the others prepared for battle, Lucian and Ariana retreated to his cabin. "I don't want you on the front lines," he said, his tone firm. Ariana crossed her arms, glaring at him. "I'm not hiding while everyone else fights. I'm part of this pack now, remember?" Lucian sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're going to be the death of me," he muttered. Ariana stepped closer, her expression softening. "I trust you to protect me," she said. "But you have to trust me too." Lucian's golden eyes met hers, and after a moment, he nodded. "Stay close to me," he said, "no matter what happens." "I promise," she said. The tension between them was electric, the weight of the coming battle only heightening their emotions. Lucian reached for her, pulling her into his arms. "I don't know what I'd do if I lost you," he murmured, his voice raw. "You won't," she said, her fingers curling into his shirt. "We'll get through this together." His lips found hers, the kiss slow and intense, as though he was pouring all his fear and hope into that single moment. Ariana responded in kind, her hands tangling in his hair as she pulled him closer. When they finally broke apart, Lucian rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her skin. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he admitted. "You're my mate, Ariana. I know it in my soul." Her heart swelled at his words, and she cupped his face in her hands. "Then we'll fight for this, for us." Lucian nodded, his determination renewed. Together, they would face whatever came next, their bond stronger than ever. The night before the battle, the air was thick with anticipation. The pack had gathered in the woods surrounding Lucian's cabin, the trees whispering secrets in the wind. The quiet murmurs of the pack were interspersed with the crackling of campfires as everyone prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the hunters. Ariana stood at the edge of the clearing, her back straight, her senses alert. Her body still ached from her earlier injuries, but her resolve was unshaken. The events of the past few weeks had changed her. strengthening her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Lucian was nearby, speaking with his second-in-command, a fierce wolf named Kyle, but his eyes never strayed far from Ariana. She could feel his gaze even though he didn't look directly at her. As if sensing her need for space, Kyle excused himself, leaving Lucian standing alone. He made his way toward Ariana, his footsteps sure and steady. "Ariana," he called softly. She turned, meeting his gaze with a soft smile, though the tension in her chest remained. "You should be resting," he said, his voice low but filled with concern. "I can't rest," she replied, her tone firm. "Not when they're out." Lucian stepped closer, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "I don't want you on the front lines." "I'm not asking for the front lines," she said, her voice steady. "But I won't hide while everyone else is fighting." Lucian's gaze softened, and for a moment she saw the weight of his responsibility settle deeper in his golden eyes. "I don't know what I'd do if anything happened to you." "I'm not going anywhere," she said with a quiet confidence. His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing against her skin in a gesture of tenderness that melted her resolve. "Promise me you'll stay close to me," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I promise," she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. For a long moment they simply stood there, their connection palpable in the night air. The rustling of the leaves and the distant howl of wolves were the only sounds that filled the space between them. Then, as if an invisible clock had ticked down to its final second, Lucian pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was desperate, fierce, and full of unspoken emotion. It was a kiss that sealed everything they were about to face. The pack was ready, their bodies poised for battle, their senses heightened. The hunters had made their move. They were on the outskirts of the territory, their numbers large, their weapons deadly. Lucian stood at the forefront, his posture commanding. He could feel the energy of his pack radiating behind him, strong, loyal, and ready. Ariana stood by his side, her heart racing as the sounds of the hunters drew closer. "There's no turning back," Kyle said, his voice steady as he stepped forward. "But we're with you, Alpha." Lucian nodded, his jaw set in determination. "We fight as one. We protect what's ours." The wolves shifted into their forms, massive and powerful, their bodies rippling with muscle and fur. Lucian's transformation was the last to take place, his bones cracking and reshaping with a speed and fluidity that was both beautiful and terrifying. Ariana stood frozen for a moment, her gaze locked on the Alpha. Even in his wolf form, he exuded power. His golden eyes were fierce and unwavering, a promise of strength and protection. "You're with me," Lucian growled, his voice low and commanding. Ariana nodded, her own transformation beginning as the rush of the shift coursed through her. She felt the strength surge through her limbs as her body morphed into her wolf form. Her senses sharpened, the night air filled with scents and sounds that overwhelmed her for a moment. But then she focused, centering herself in the present, knowing Lucian was just ahead of her. The pack moved as one, flowing through the trees, their paws silent on the forest floor. The hunters were close now, and the scent of their weapons mixed with the bitter tang of their fear. The clash was brutal and swift. The hunters, expecting to find a scattered and unorganized pack, were met with the full force of Lucian's wolves. The sound of gunfire echoed through the trees, but the pack was faster, more agile, and better prepared. Lucian tore into the first hunter he encountered, his teeth sinking deep into flesh as he let out a ferocious growl. The man barely had time to scream before Lucian's claws raked through him, bringing him down with a single swipe. Ariana fought beside him, her wolf form sleek and agile. She leapt into the fray, her teeth sinking into another hunter's arm, her strength surprising even herself. The hunters were prepared, but they were no match for the wolves who knew the land better than anyone. In the chaos of battle, Ariana's eyes searched for Lucian. She found him easily, his golden eyes gleaming in the moonlight as he fought with precision, every movement calculated. But then she heard a shout, a cry of pain. She whipped her head toward the sound and saw Kyle, bloodied and struggling, surrounded by two hunters. Without thinking, she launched herself forward, her claws extended, her teeth bared. The first hunter turned to face her, but she was too fast. She knocked him to the ground with a powerful swipe. her teeth sinking into his throat before he could react. She barely had time to register the kill before the second hunter fired his gun. Ariana's body jerked back in pain as the bullet grazed her side, but she didn't falter. She charged forward again, her rage fueling her as she tore into the hunter's throat. As the body collapsed, she turned to Kyle, who was struggling to rise. "You okay?" she asked, her voice strained. Kyle nodded, his breathing shallow but steady. "I'm good. Just don't do that again." Ariana gave him a quick smile before she shifted back into her wolf form and leapt back into the battle. As the night wore on, the battle raged on. The pack fought fiercely, their bond with one another a source of power that no hunter could break. But Lucian's mind was focused on one thing, Ariana. He could hear the sound of her fighting, her growls, the snap of her teeth, the swish of her fur in the wind. But he also heard the faintest tremor in her breath when she was struck, and it was that sound that drove him to fight harder, faster. Finally, as the last of the hunters were dealt with, Lucian found Ariana, her wolf form still standing tall, her body bloodied but alive. He shifted back to human form, his chest heaving as he approached her. "Ariana," he growled, his voice raw with both relief and anger. She shifted back into her human form, wincing as she touched her side. "I'm fine," she said quickly. Lucian didn't listen. He closed the distance between them, his arms wrapping around her as he pressed her close. "Don't scare me like that again." Ariana smiled softly, her heart thundering in her chest as she rested her head against his chest. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. Lucian kissed her forehead, the depth of his emotions clear in the touch. "You're mine, Ariana, and I'll protect you for as long as I breathe." And in that moment, with the scent of blood in the air and the weight of the battle behind them, they knew their bond was unbreakable. The battle had ended, but the forest remained heavy with the scent of blood, smoke, and burnt earth. The wolves had fought valiantly, each one pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion. The hunters, though stronger than they had anticipated, were no match for the pack's unity and fierce determination. They had been driven back, retreating into the shadows, but the victory felt hollow. The loss of life on both sides weighed heavily on everyone, even if the pack had successfully defended their land. Lucian stood at the edge of the clearing, his back rigid, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His wolf's heightened senses could still pick up the faint traces of the hunters, but they were far now, no longer an immediate threat. Despite the victory, his mind was not at ease. Ariana approached quietly, her footsteps light on the earth. Her body was sore, bruised, and covered in the aftermath of the battle, but her spirit was strong. Her side still burned where the bullet had grazed her, but it was nothing compared to the emotional toll of the conflict. She stopped a few paces behind him, her heart tightening as she took in his tense posture. She knew how much this battle had cost him, not just in physical terms, but emotionally. As Alpha, Lucian carried the weight of every life in the pack, and the losses from the skirmish had struck him harder than anyone could understand. Ariana stepped forward, her hand finding his. It was the simplest of gestures, but it was enough to break through his wall of silence. Lucian turned to face her, his golden eyes darker than usual, reflecting a storm of emotions. His fingers curled around hers as if her touch could anchor him to the present. "You were incredible," he said hoarsely, his voice rough from the raw intensity of the fight. "I don't know what I would have done without." Ariana smiled softly, but the weight of her own feelings was evident. "We're in this together, Lucian, always." He nodded, but his eyes betrayed his thoughts. He was thinking of the bloodshed, the bodies they had lost, the lives they had taken. The scars from the battle were not just physical, they were deep, marked on their souls. "We've won," he said slowly, his voice filled with disbelief. "But the price is high. We may have driven them off, but it won't be long before they return, and we'll have to fight again, and again, and again." Ariana's heart ached for him. She understood the responsibility that came with being Alpha, but more than that, she understood the burden of losing those who depended on you, the constant weight of knowing that no matter how hard you fought, the fight was never truly over. "Then we fight together, Lucian," she said firmly, her hand squeezing his. "We protect our pack, and we fight for each other. That's what we do." His eyes softened, the hardness in them momentarily dissipating. He leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead in a tender kiss. The touch was gentle, but it held all the emotions he couldn't express in words. "I love you," he whispered, his voice full of raw sincerity. Ariana's breath caught in her throat at the unexpected admission. Her heart soared, and the words she had been holding back spilled out in a rush. "I love you too, Lucian." For a long moment they stood together, allowing the quiet of the night to envelop them. The sounds of the pack tending to the wounded and cleaning up the remnants of the battle filled the air, but in that moment, it was just the two of them. The following days were filled with difficult tasks. The pack had to mourn their fallen, bury the dead, and rebuild what had been broken in the wake of the battle. Lucian took charge, organizing the cleanup and ensuring that the injured received proper care, but it was clear that he was struggling. His alpha instincts drove him to push himself harder than anyone else, but Ariana could see the toll it was taking on him. One evening, she found him alone in the cabin, sitting by the fire, his face cast in shadow. The weight of leadership had settled deep into his bones, and the loneliness of his position was palpable. Ariana entered quietly, her heart aching as she approached him. She sat down beside him, her hand reaching for his, offering the silent comfort that only someone who truly understood could give. "You don't have to carry it all alone, Lucian," she said softly. "You don't have to bear the weight of the world by yourself." Lucian turned his gaze to her, his golden eyes tired but filled with gratitude. "I know," he said quietly, "but sometimes it feels like I have no choice. As Alpha, I'm responsible for every life in this pack. I can't afford to make mistakes. Every decision I make affects everyone." Ariana's heart broke at the vulnerability in his voice. She knew that Lucian had always been strong, always the protector, but she also knew that even the strongest leaders needed support. They needed someone who could stand by them, who could help carry the load. "You're not alone, Lucian," she whispered, her fingers gently brushing his cheek. "I'm here. You have me." He exhaled slowly, his gaze softening as he looked into her eyes. The distance between them, both emotional and physical, seemed to melt away. "I don't deserve you," he murmured. Ariana smiled, her thumb tracing the outline of his jaw. "I think you do. You're more than just an alpha, Lucian. You're someone who cares, who protects. You fight for your pack. You fight for me." The words hung in the air, powerful and sincere, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Lucian allowed himself to truly relax. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing as he let the weight of her love wash over him. In the days that followed, Lucian and Ariana's bond grew even stronger. While the pack continued to rebuild, Lucian found himself relying more on Ariana for support. Her presence became a constant comfort, her strength and unwavering loyalty a grounding force in the chaos that surrounded them. Their nights together became more intimate, filled with quiet conversations, stolen kisses, and shared moments of tenderness. Lucian no longer had to hide his feelings for Ariana. He had let her into his heart, and with each passing day, his love for her deepened. One night, as they lay together beneath the stars, the world around them calm for the first time in days, Lucian turned to her, his eyes filled with a depth of emotion. "Ariana, I never thought I'd find someone like you," he said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "I never thought I'd find someone who could stand beside me like this. You're everything I never knew I needed." Ariana's heart swelled, and she smiled softly, her fingers tracing the lines of his chest. "You don't have to do it all alone, Lucian. I'm here for as long as you'll have me." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, his arms tightening around her. "You'll never have to leave. Not while I'm here." As they lay together, the quiet of the night surrounding them, Lucian knew that no matter what challenges the future held, he would face them with Ariana by his side. She was his mate, his strength, and his heart. And together, they would protect everything they had built. The days following the battle had been quieter, but no less intense. The pack had taken the time to heal, both physically and emotionally, but the peace was temporary. Ariana had settled into the role of Lucian's most trusted ally, his right hand in many ways. Their connection had only deepened, and with every passing day, it felt as if they were becoming more in tune with one another. But amid the lingering tension, there was something different stirring in Ariana, something she hadn't anticipated. All signs, a slight nausea in the mornings, an unusual heaviness in her chest, a wave of dizziness that she couldn't explain. At first, she brushed it off as a result of the battle's physical toll, or perhaps stress from the aftermath. But as days passed, the symptoms persisted, and a deep, unfamiliar feeling began to settle in her. She couldn't ignore it anymore. There was something growing inside her, something undeniable. One evening, after a long day of tending to the pack, Ariana found herself alone in the quiet of Lucian's cabin. The dim light of the fire cast flickering shadows across the room, and she sat on the edge of the bed, her heart pounding with uncertainty. The thoughts that had been swirling in her mind for days suddenly seemed too loud, too real. She had never anticipated something like this, especially with everything going on. The responsibility of the pack, the constant danger, and now, this. But no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the reality was undeniable. She couldn't keep it to herself any longer. Ariana stood up slowly, her hands trembling as she reached for the small vial she had hidden in a drawer, a vial she had been avoiding for days, a pregnancy test. She had tried to convince herself it was just stress, just fatigue, but the growing sense inside her couldn't be ignored. She stepped into the bathroom, her thoughts racing. It only took a few minutes for the result to come in, but it felt like hours. When she saw the faint blue line confirming her pregnancy, her world seemed to shift on its axis. She stared at the test, her emotions a swirl of confusion, joy, and fear. What did this mean for her? For Lucian? For the pack? Ariana couldn't bring herself to tell Lucian immediately. The weight of the news felt too heavy, and part of her feared what it might mean for their future. She had seen firsthand how hard Lucian fought to protect those he loved, and she knew that the responsibilities he already bore were immense. What would this news do to him? Would he see it as another burden? But she knew deep down that Lucian wasn't someone who would shy away from the challenges of life. He was strong, resolute, and unwavering. Yet, there was a part of her that feared the unknown, how a pregnancy would change everything. Days passed in a daze for Ariana. She couldn't look at Lucian the same way, though she tried to hide it. Every time their gazes met, her chest tightened and her mind raced, wondering how to approach the subject. Finally, one night, as the two of them sat by the fire, Lucian lounging on the couch with his arm draped over the back, Ariana sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of him, she knew it was time. Lucian looked at her, his golden eyes gentle but curious. "You've been distant lately. Is everything all right?" Ariana met his gaze, her heart in her throat. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. She could lie, or she could tell him the truth. But the truth was what weighed on her most. "I have something to tell you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's expression immediately shifted to one of concern. "What is it?" Ariana took a deep breath, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. She could feel the flutter of nerves within her. "I'm pregnant." The silence in the room was almost suffocating. Lucian's eyes widened slightly, the shock clear on his face. It wasn't fear, but something deeper, an emotion she couldn't quite place. "Pregnant?" he echoed, his voice hushed. Ariana nodded, unable to meet his gaze. The vulnerability of the moment made her feel exposed. "I didn't know how to tell you," she confessed. "I didn't know what this would mean, for us." Lucian didn't speak immediately. Instead, he stood up, his large frame towering over her as he approached. She could see the contemplation in his eyes, and the weight of his thoughts made her heart ache. "Ariana, look at me," he said gently. She lifted her gaze slowly, meeting his intense golden eyes. There was no fear there, only a deep, profound understanding. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked softly, his tone not accusatory but filled with care. "I didn't know how to," she confessed. "I didn't want to put this on you, not with everything you already carry. The pack, the threats, the danger, and now, this." Lucian knelt down in front of her, cupping her face in his strong hands. His touch was gentle but firm, the warmth of his palms spreading through her. "You don't carry this alone, Ariana. We'll face this together. You don't ever have to hide anything from me." Ariana felt a surge of relief flood through her, and tears sprang to her eyes. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to fully exhale. She could feel the love and support emanating from Lucian as he held her. It was a love that had only deepened over the past weeks, and in this moment, it felt as if nothing else mattered. Are you happy about this?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Lucian smiled softly, his thumb gently brushing away the tear that had fallen from her cheek. "More than you know. Ariana, you're everything to me. This child, our child, will only make us stronger. We will protect it, and we will protect you. Always." The words seemed to wash over her, soothing the last of her doubts. A future that had once seemed so uncertain suddenly felt a little clearer, filled with the promise of love, strength, and unity. "Lucian," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "I love you. I love you so much." "I love you too," he murmured, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was soft, tender, and full of promises yet to be made. Over the coming weeks, the reality of Ariana's pregnancy settled into the fabric of their lives. Lucian was fiercely protective, but his care was gentle and unwavering. He made sure she was well rested, ensuring she didn't overexert herself despite her desire to stay active and help the pack rebuild. Ariana, on the other hand, was surprised by how naturally the maternal instincts began to surface within her. She found herself daydreaming about the life they would build together, about the little one growing inside her. She could see Lucian as a father, strong, devoted, and deeply loving. But the world outside their quiet cabin still held dangers. The hunters who had attacked before were not gone. They were only waiting for the right moment to strike again. Lucian knew that the pack's future would be full of challenges, but with Ariana by his side, he felt more prepared than ever to face whatever came their way. Together, they would not only protect their pack but their future, the child that was yet to come, and the love that had already flourished in the face of adversity. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means a lot and helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.